Hi everybody. I was looking through my copious amounts of mark making tools today and realized I haven't done a whole lot with some of the strange tools that I do have. So I decided today I would experiment with those tools and see what kind of marks I can make. I started out using a catalyst wedge, the green one in the lower right hand corner, and it has little scoops so I could drag the ink that I put down and turn it into black stripes. So that was pretty fun because I haven't done that before with ink. This is some fluorescent red from Golden. I love the color. Doesn't show up quite as vibrant on the camera as it is in person. And you might think, okay, so Jackie's using a wedge and her color shaper. Not very interesting marks, Jackie, which I would say you're right. But I haven't really started yet. Just trying to get some color down. And I think that you'll find that you can really use anything to make marks. Anything. So, right, this turquoise is going on with just a piece of cardboard from a box. And it goes on, everything just goes on a little bit differently, even if it's the same shape. So, cardboard, very similar to a color shaper, but very different marks. The color shaper is a little bit smoother because it has a silicone wedge shape on it. And the cardboard has more, I don't know what to say. Just, I was going to say stringier. There's a less solid streak of color. How's that? Unfortunately, my camera filled up. My phone filled up as I was filming that last section, so you missed me putting on the quinacridone gold and some more of the light blue. However, we're back. So I got my jelly plate out. I loaded it up with some white paint. I put down a ribbon. And when I pick it up, you can see that the areas where the ribbon was is perfectly clear. And there's just like a light veil of white over the other areas. Now I'm adding black paint. Gonna try doing something very similar, and you'll see how that works as well. This is a 12 by 12 jelly plate as well, so it's pretty big. It's fun to have this because now all of a sudden all those bright, vibrant marks, a lot of them are muted with the black or the white, though the white's not very opaque. And it really highlights the areas that are not black or white. This is just some string or some yarn. Thought I would try this. Kind of interesting, right? The veil is very interesting, that kind of color blocking. There's a lot of detail underneath there. It might have worked better if I had different solid colors. But again, this is an experiment. I was using Golden Open paints, which are the ones that don't dry quickly. So I wanted to make sure before I went on that I really dried things well, because the open paints really do stay on longer, or stay wet longer than you'd expect, or at least longer than I expect. This is my sad little yardstick my children destroyed. And I've cut this paper into 4 11 by 15 sheets. The color palette I have no explanation for. It's super random. So I've got phthalo turquoise, fluorescent red, quinacridone gold, black and white so far. Very random. I was concerned about the color palette as I just kept adding whatever felt good in the moment. No regrets. It just felt very, very like 80s or something. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but definitely not modern. However, I'm really happy with where they ended up. So hopefully, well, whatever. I grew up in the 80s, so I'm not ashamed of the 80s at all. I know I've been using this black paper with the white circles on it a lot. I've been loving this paper. I'm sure that's very obvious. I think this is the last of it though, so I'll have to make more. So you might get a break from seeing that. Because the color palette was so light and because I had so much white on top of the colors and kind of pastel-y colors, I wanted to add a lot of black just to make something very bold so as to, I guess, not be so distracted by all the small random colors that are in there, or by the color palette itself, really, which admittedly is distracting. I really wanted to put that stripe on there. I'm not sure why it was so important, but there it is. So normally I would cut off the left section of that top tissue paper piece because it has a little bit of the black that I cut something else out of. But because I'm experimenting with mark making, I figured I would keep it. I mean, it is a very delicate, thin black line that normally I would get rid of, but it adds a little something. All right, so now I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to take further first. Because this white was so transparent and very light that I put on with the jelly plate, I wanted to make it more opaque. I did scratch some in there to get some of that fluorescent red to show through. But I'm using some heavy body golden paint. And then kind of fading it out. Fading it out where there's no firm boundary for it to stop. To do that, I just added a little bit of water, honestly, on my fingertip. It helped me spread the paint around very smoothly and leaves a more gradual fade. Clearly, I am not using all my words here today. I'll just stick with the same four and keep repeating them. I actually haven't used my finger to get water and then smear the paint around before. Normally I would do it with a brush. It was super easy. I'm definitely gonna do this more from now on. So because I'm going away from that line that I made with the jelly plate, those are kind of some crisp, hard edges. So having the other white fade out just helped me have some contrast there for the different areas of the white. This is some white acrylic ink. And I wanted to have some fading here too. So you can't really tell where it starts and where it ends. And same thing here, just making my whites a little darker so that the contrast is starker. That really calls out the areas that, the negative space, I guess, from the jelly plate. The colors that show through. It was very satisfying to make those crisp lines, just to trace over them. It's just a very intentional line. All right, so in the interest of mark making, I'm using my Neocolor II crayons here, which are water soluble. I wanted to pep some of these up with the color palette and also just add a little bit more depth. So using these pencils, and then I'm dipping my finger now into the gloss medium. What that does is it helps me spread the color around smoothly, and it will set and seal the crayon so that it won't keep bleeding with water. Same thing with the green up in the right corner. And it doesn't show up in the camera, but I will tell you that that fluorescent red, figure 8 looking shape in the upper right really pops against the green. Really, really pops against the green. They're complementary colors, and like the fluorescent red is almost vibrating when you look at it because the green really sets it off. Fluorescent colors don't show well on camera. I really wish they did. I loved the fact that from my very first ink marks that I made, and I dragged that catalyst wedge through that had the openings, that I have all these beautiful black and white lines in the background, and I didn't use any lines from a collage. So I will definitely do that again. In the past I've used it, I've put some color down and then dragged it through to just take stripes away. So if I had a bunch of blue, I would just drag it through the blue, and then I would have blue and white stripes, or blue and whatever color was underneath the blue stripes. But I've never done it with black and white, which seems silly now that I've done it. I'm using some, I think that's phthalo blue and black that I blended together. And I'm using a baby wipe to apply it as a heavy, heavy glaze. Because the paper I was using is textured, it's watercolor paper, the jelly plate print was a bit speckled because it didn't sink into all of the textured areas. So using that and getting the paper wet allowed it to be a smoother color, and it really darkened it up. Same thing up here. You can see how crisp that looks now because the contrast is so much greater now. Maybe not so much, but it makes a difference. This is the acrylic ink, just pure, not watered down. I'm putting it on the edge so I can let it drip down a bit. Sorry, you can't see. Top secret. I put the clip on the corners to weigh that corner down. The paper's curling a bit because I put so much water on it in the very beginning with the ink. So as it dries, it curls up a little bit. So I'm using the ink and kind of a watery, well, using water with the brush just to mute some of those colors down and tie them together a bit. I liked having that drip. But then I was worried that the color was a bit too washed out. Adding a little bit of green and orange here to just complete that color story and also tie it in with the other pages. And then I'm adding it in this, I don't know what we call it. Almost looks like an ampersand. this area. And it really just adds some nice luminosity. Right? It just kind of, it warms it up because of the colors I chose. But it also just makes it, the colors that much more vibrant. And a bit more ink. I'm going over the white part of the stripes just to have them stand out a bit more so there's more contrast. I really had fun with these. These were not colors I would normally put together at all. I had a ton of fun digging myself out of the strange color combination, and I really like them right now. This is what the final four look like. Let me know what you think. Do you think I was crazy with these colors? How do you think it turned out? Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. I'd love to see you more.